So we're 54 days away from kickoff on the Plains and a brand new Village Vice here. We thank you for tuning in. He's Zach Blackerby. I'm Brad Law. How about we just jump right in? You know, that's the best way. If you're going to go swimming and the water's cold, just jump right in. Can we just jump right into a quarterback discussion today?
Yeah, you're starting to see more and more lists come out as far as, okay, here's the pecking order of quarterbacks by conference, and most of the ones you see have Payton Thorne towards the bottom.
Yeah. And I want to talk about why that is. And I also want to kind of mention that every discussion that we've had on this show for the last 3-4 months, at least, where we talk about Auburn winning 9 games or more, there's at least one comment on every show that says, oh, no, you can't do it with Payton Thorne at quarterback. And I wanted to get into a little bit of that discussion as to why people feel that way. I suspect a lot of it is the bowl game. But I don't want to make it so simple to where I say it's all the bowl game. What do you think? Where do you think that is coming from mostly?
Now, I don't think Auburn's passing game looked good last year, and a lot of that's on Payton. I think a lot of it's on the offense. I think a lot of it's on the receivers, and I think the protection was actually okay.
Yeah.
To me, I don't know how you can have a full opinion of Payton Thorne if you watch the games last year. Auburn's coaching staff on offense did a terrible job of putting people in situations for them to succeed. And I just don't know how you can look at Payton Thorne a year ago and say, yeah, he was really destined to help carry Auburn's offense. And that wasn't really the case. And I think that's why it was such a pleasant surprise when he was more of a factor running the ball than we expected, because he had to, because like the passing lanes weren't there, because there was just no separation, and he missed guys too. Like, I'm not saying Payton Thorne was perfect.
Yeah.
For the folks who say like Auburn can't win without Payton Thorne, or can't win with Payton Thorne, excuse me, you may be right. And we'll really learn. We will really learn that this year. You may be totally right. But I don't think using what you saw last year as evidence is the move. I think if you want to make a case against Payton Thorne, I don't think last year makes sense. I think you use his second year starting at Michigan State as more of an argument than his first year at Auburn.
Yeah. And that year at Michigan State, he you know, the year that he really went off at Michigan State, he had a 1,600-yard rusher. He had a 1,000-yard receiver. I say that to say it's not just about the quarterback play in a vacuum. Quarterback play is never in a vacuum. Nobody always or never. So it's very rarely just about quarterback play in a vacuum. And when some of those pieces are missing, it's logical that some play would fall off. If you go back and look at Jarrett Stidham's 2017 versus Jarrett Stidham's 2018,
yeah,
he didn't have as productive an 18 as he did a 17. Well, he was missing an NFL offensive lineman, was missing Kerryon Johnson in the backfield. Like, there were missing pieces in that offense. I think the line as a whole was not as good in 18 as it was in 17. So those things absolutely matter, which is sort of the main, like, I think the talking point. We're going to get into, where Payton ranks among SEC quarterbacks and where could he rank this year, because there's some good quarterbacks in the league. But the conversation is about the totality of the offense. And for Payton's numbers not to be better, for Payton's performance individually not to be better, about 3 or 4 other elements would have to fall off or would have to be grossly, not a little, grossly overvalued going into the season. Whether it's the scheme, the lack of rotating quarterbacks, the improvement on the offensive line, the improvement of the wide receiver core, or the experience coming back in the running back room. All of those things factor in to Payton's play on the field.
Yeah, I don't know if I said this here or somewhere else, but Auburn did such a good job this offseason of doing everything they could to make the offense not about Payton Thorne. Because I'm sure they would have considered a quarterback if it had made sense. And I don't think those guys were really out there. And so they're like, let's use this money. Let's go out and get, Robert Lewis. Let's go out and get Keandre Lambert-Smith. Let's get some protection with Percy Lewis. And all of a sudden, the offense looks a lot different. Looks a bunch. They brought in a bunch of talent. And so I think Cam Coleman is obviously going to become a factor here. But, does it make Payton Thorne a better quarterback? No, I think it just puts him in a better situation to succeed. And he was not anywhere close to a situation to succeed a year ago. And to me, like, for all the folks that say, well, Auburn can't win without Payton Thorne, I think you've totally missed the point of the offseason. Is the coaching staff says, well, we're not trying to make it about Payton Thorne. We're trying to make it about the offense. That's what good offenses look like. Look at what Washington did last year. Like, all of those receivers got drafted. Michael Penix got drafted. The whole unit gets drafted. Look, think about all these great offenses in recent years with the Joe Burrow season at LSU. Like, all of those receivers that he was throwing to all got picked as well. And like, you just haven't really had that at Auburn. But you talk about Payton Thorne's, year at Michigan State where he had the 1,000-yard receiver and the 1,600-yard rusher. Like, those guys are in the league. Those guys are in the league right now. And he's about to throw to guys who will make it in the league. Cam Coleman, fortunately, he's got to stay here for a few years before he can get drafted, but he'll be in the league. I think Rivaldo Fairweather's going to get a shot. He's going to be handing the ball off to guys who are going to be able to carry the ball on Sundays. And so, to me, it's just a different situation than it was a year ago. So, once again, for folks that are saying, oh my goodness, Auburn can't win with Payton Thorne, you missed the entire point of the offseason.
Yeah, no question. Now, I don't want to, I want to look at some numbers, some stats, and say that last year's passing efficiency for Auburn was ranked 13th in the SEC. They were next to last in passing efficiency. So we're not talking about a returning offense that was top half of the league, but and we acknowledge that some of Payton's game, like, in the bowl game, Payton completed 48% of 27 pass attempts. And against Alabama, he was 5 for 16. Against Texas A&M, 6 for 12. Those are the numbers that stand out in a glaring fashion. Yeah. But Payton's play wasn't the reason Auburn lost the Iron Bowl. He played well enough to beat Georgia. He played well enough to beat Alabama. Played well enough in those games. So, I don't know. I just wanted to throw out a little context before we get into the next part of this discussion. And before we get into the next part of this discussion, look how sharp Zach looks.
It's the throwback, baby. It's the
throwback. Look at that hoodie. I'm more comfortable just looking at Zach, and I know he's comfy. You can be comfortable too, and you can look sharp, and you can be glad that you went to rowback.com and used our promo code VICE20. VICE20 at rowback.com. You'll get 20% off your order. Stock up on hoodies before the weather turns cold. It will eventually in 6 months or so, I guess. But you've also got great prints on polos. They've got shorts, t-shirts, 20% off everything right now at rowback.com. Make sure at checkout, use our promo code, which is VICE20. Okay. Where does Payton Thorne rank among SEC quarterbacks coming into the season? I put together a little list.
Okay.
And this list starts with the returning starters in the league, kind of the top half of last year's passing statistics. Okay. Carson Beck is the leading returning passer in the SEC. Jackson Dart is second.
Okay.
Quinn Ewers, if you take his numbers from the Big 12,
you absolutely should. Yep.
Would be third. And I think you can make an argument that Ewers might be the best returning quarterback in the SEC. But Beck 1, Dart 2, Ewers 3. Brady Cook at Missouri would be 4. They had a top 5 passing efficiency rating last year. Jalen Milroe would be 5. Graham Mertz at Florida would be 6. Beyond that, here are some other guys. So Taylon Green at Arkansas.
Yeah.
Brock Vandegrift at Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Nussmeier at LSU.
Mm-hmm.
Blake Shapen, the Baylor transfer at Mississippi State.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Arnold, who had a great bowl game for Oklahoma. Bowl
Mm-hmm.
games are bowl games. Bowl games don't count unless they're the big ones. Lenora Sellers at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Nico, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, the phenomenal freshman at Tennessee. Connor Wegman at Texas A&M. And the New Mexico State transfer, Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt.
It's got a shiver went down my spine. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the rest of the list. As you hear those names, Zach, where does Payton fit in going into the year? Where could he end up on that list?
So those top 5 returners of Cook, Dart, Beck, Ewers, Milroe, Payton should be behind all of them.
Okay. I mean, just based on proof of performance, I can't argue that.
So much tougher. It just gets so much tougher after that. I mean, I would think I'd rather have Nico than him. I think Nico is fantastic. The little bit that we've seen from him.
How about Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma?
I'd probably rather have Jackson Arnold. I'd rather have Garrett Nussmeier. Connor Wegman's interesting. Like, if you promise me he could stay healthy, I'd probably take him, but I just don't know if I trust him from a health perspective. And then I've probably got Payton. After, like, I'd rather have Payton than Graham Mertz.
Okay.
I'd rather have him than Taylon Green, Lenora Sellers, Brock Vandegrift, Blake Shapen, and Diego Pavia. So, yeah, I'd have him around, 8 or 9?
Yeah.
But he's got to perform like that.
The top half.
Yeah, he's got to perform. He's got to perform like that. And then, I think he could scoot up. But right now, that's probably where I've got him.
That was my next question is, what would he need to do to move up maybe into that top 6 in your mind?
I don't know if it's anything he can do. I think it's scheme. I think it's scheme and wide receiver stepping up. I mean, Payton Thorne, I think, is a fine quarterback. I don't think he's great. I think he's a fine quarterback, and he's a quarterback you can win with in the SEC if you have the pieces around him. And this goes back to what we were just talking about. Auburn did the best that they could to get pieces around him. I think they've done that. I think they've done enough. So now you got to hope that the Hugh Freeze scheme can open things up enough for him. And we saw his scheme at Ole Miss work and elevate guys at the quarterback position at Ole Miss that weren't as good as the numbers that they produced. We saw that. They've got to do it with Thorne now, or else this season is not going to work.
Yeah. Just for fun, if you swap, this is just a fun hypothetical for July.
Okay.
If you put Payton on last year with the surrounding offense that Georgia put on the field last year, if you swap Carson Beck and Payton Thorne, what's Auburn's final record last year? What's Georgia's final record last year if you switch the two?
Oh, I don't know. Man.
That kind of question, by the way, is meant to underscore how important the supporting cast is. It's not a direct swap. Auburn wouldn't. I'm not saying Auburn would have gone 6-7 last year, or Georgia would have gone 12-1, or 13-1, or whatever they did.
I mean, I think Georgia would have lost more games, I would think. I'm trying to think what games do you feel way better at? Auburn might have beaten Georgia. They may have completed the upset if that were to happen. But I mean, Carson Beck is a better quarterback than Payton Thorne.
I'm not arguing to the contrary.
Okay.
But I think that the supporting cast matters. I mean, if you've got
Rivaldo
Fairweather is top half SEC tight end, right? Don't we?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's objectively people would agree with that. Brock Bowers is Brock Bowers, and he took over the game. Carson Beck had to get it to him, but he took over the game in the second half at Jordan-Hare Stadium. So a guy like that, a playmaker like that, can make the difference in a win or loss if you got a guy that can get him to him consistently. All right, let me give you another fun one. I know we had this discussion off air.
Hold on, let me give you a fun one first.
Okay, please.
I got to tell you about our friends at MyBookie.ag. MyBookie, of course, you know them for their expansive sports book. You can wager on anything, but they also got the virtual casino happening right now. You can go to mybookie.ag right now and And when you make that first deposit, use promo code next round, you get some VIP perks to deal with. Be very, very fun. I use deal on purpose because they've got live dealer interaction for your blackjack. They've also got slots that you can do all from the comfort of your own home. So head over to mybookie.ag, use promo code next round. How's that for a fun one?
It's really fun. I would encourage people to check it out. Make sure you use the right promo code too.
Sure.
All right. Again, we had this discussion off air one day, and so if this is repetitive, just forgive me, because I don't remember if we did it on air. But if you take the 2010 roster and put Barrett Trotter as the quarterback, and the 2011 roster and put Cam Newton as the quarterback, what are the records of those teams in 2010 and 2011?
I mean, without like really thinking about it, I don't think Cam loses. So I think the following year, I think you're looking at 12-0.
Yeah. Okay.
And then with Trotter, I think you probably lose 2 or 3.
Yeah. I think you absolutely lose 2 or 3 in 2010, and that's no slight on Trotter. I think Cam is obviously he's the best quarterback in the SEC in the history of the SEC, and without question, got Auburn over the finish line of multiple games. But I would submit to you that it was not 95% Cam. You had a senior laden defensive line, you had a senior laden offensive line. That 2 or 3 of those guys started their freshman year, and it was their 4th year, and the experience on the offensive line matters. And that team in 2011, they were blown out 2 or 3 times. So I think even with Cam, I don't know that Cam's worth 17 to 21 points on that team. I think that team loses a couple of games that year.
I think if you have a guy like Cam, I think it changes off-season workouts. I think it changes what you do through fall camp. I think it changes the mentality of everybody in that locker room knowing that you've got that guy. So I have a hard time seeing like a Cam Newton team in college getting blown out.
Yeah.
Because it's so much more than just what happens when you step on the field and what happens,
Yeah.
But, between
that's fair.
Between the sidelines there. So I think it's bigger than that.
Yeah. I don't think they get blown out in 2011 in any game. I just don't know if they have enough surrounding supporting parts for him to pull them across the finish line. But
sure.
Let us know what you think about that in the comments. The supporting cast matters a great deal. Speaking of the supporting cast, Zach, just a few thoughts on recruiting. Since last we were with everybody before the 4th of July holiday, Auburn has added a couple of guys to the 2025 class, and they're knocking on the door of a top 10 class as it sits right now, and are there depending on which metric or which ranking you look at.
Yeah, Jacoby Ward is the big one. Hollis Davidson, we already kind of talked about him. He rejoins the class after decommitting. He didn't want to take visits, sounds like committed elsewhere, which is fine. I respect him for that. But he's back in the class, and so couple him with Ryan G. You've got 2 different tight ends that can do different things. It makes sense why you would want both of them. Jacoby Ward, the big one, I mean, over 320 pounds, moves very, very smooth. And this is a guy from Savannah, Georgia, that the consensus of him across the board is he's not ranked high enough because folks in Savannah typically aren't ranked where they probably should be. And so Jacoby picks Auburn over Tennessee and Miami. It sounds like made a strong push late. And if Coach Cristobal wants you to play O-line, you're probably pretty good at it. So I think that's probably another feather in the cap here for Jacoby Ward. He joins Auburn's 2025 class as the 5th offensive lineman, which is exciting. You look at those 5, you could legit form an offensive line from the 5 of them. And I'm sure that was part of their intent with that. But now the group of Broderick Scholl, Tavares Dice, Ty Buster, and Spencer Doland. And now you obviously have Jacoby Ward there too. So you got to like where you're at right now if you're Auburn, but I think they've got more big names coming.
Yeah.
And I think they'll creep back into that top 10 probably by the end of the month.
Yeah. It's still very early in July. You got over 2/3 of the month to go. And this is a month of movement. in recruiting. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll cover it for you here and react to it here on Village Vice.
No question about it. Brad, I think that about does it for today's show.
It does. Thanks, everybody, for watching, subscribing, commenting. We love to know your thoughts. And remember, until next time, everyone has vices. Yes, they do. Make sure Village Vice is one of yours.